Thank you everyone for tuning into another informative video here on the Information Age. Today we have a heated debate. Did the people of Israel have prostitution? Okay, we got my brother Yashar defending Israel, and we have Henry Williams that's going in and saying Israel had prostitution. Okay, I'm finna turn it over to the timekeeper. Are you ready? Hello? Okay, so which one of you guys like to go first?
He can go first.
I would like to open it.
Okay, Henry Williams will open. All right. You have 5 minutes, Henry,
Okay.
and you can start.
Yes, my premises here today is to show since ancient time prostitution been around. Before the Israelites became the nation of Israelite, their founding fathers, dealing with the 12 tribes of Israel, the 12 sons of Jacob, they indulged in prostitution. Even when the law of Moses came, they still did not follow the laws of God and still practiced prostitution. Prostitution became so relevant in Israel that they had cult prostitution. That means outside of the temple of Israel, outside before the temple was even made, outside of the temple, which they call a tabernacle, a tent. Before a building was erected, the tent, they had prostitutions in front of it. They indulged in it. They even made poetry to it. They danced around it. It was so ingrained in their culture that not just one, but hundreds of sites was found to show that prostitution, religional prostitution, they had rites, they had celebration and idols dedicated to the sexuality of the prostitution. And even in Israel, they had two terms. And today, I will show them two terms with an extra term that deal with the man. You could say the homosexual, transsexual, heterosexual, bisexual of men dealing with prostitution in the ancient kingdom of Israel. Yes, today we might hear that God did not allow it, but we understand people will be people. It was it was part of every culture. And that's what I am here today to show and to debate and then to prove without a reasonable doubt that it had prostitution on the corner and had prostitution in the kingdom. And even when the foundation of the nation, the people of Israel, they had prostitution. The daughters of Israel prostituted themselves. The men of Israel prostituted themselves and also took on foreign women as prostitution. And that's what I'm here to show today in this debate. My competitor, he might explain a lot of things. I might explain a lot of things, but it's up to you, the judges, the people, to decide by the archaeological evidence and also from words that was written. The Bible, you could say, might be hearsay. Some people don't believe in the Bible. But if it's in your face, it's in your face. It's real. It's there, written in stone, and also on paper. I'm here to show the archaeological evidence that most people not aware of. I'm here to show verses that people skim across without realizing what they talking about. So bear with us. Bear with us as we go deep inside these people and they're dealing with prostitution. I'm done.
All right. So you yield the rest of your time. You have 33 seconds left. We're going
Yeah,
to turn
I
it.
use my
All righty. We're going to turn it over to our brother Yashar.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm sharing my screen. All right, family. So, did the ancient nation of Yasharal practice prostitution as a way of life for our women and young women? Let's get into it, right? So, the points that I'm going to be bringing out is the meaning of prostitution according to the narrative, the Hebrew and the English, right? I'm coming from the lexicon and the dictionary, right? I'm going to also bring some historical scholars, biblical scholars, theologians, and archaeologists, right? And of course, I'm coming from the Bible, right? So let's get into it, right? What is spiritual prostitution versus modern day prostitution? Is it the same? Got to ask yourself these questions, family, because a lot of people like to put this westernized mindset into a thought process that's ancient, where words wasn't even used in that language to represent what this person is trying to talk about and bring out. So let's get into the first definition, right? King James Dictionary, right? Definition says prostitute, right? To offer freely to a lewd use or to indiscriminate lewdness. Do not prostitute thy daughter, right? Do not give her up for no money. Do not give her up to no temple to be used as a prostitute. It's very clear, right? In the definition of this modern word that's not found in the Hebrew, right? So, second definition, to give up to any vile or infamous purpose, to devote to anything base, to sell to wickedness, as to prostitute, talents to the propagation of infidel principles, to prostitute the press to the publication of blasphemy. Here, there's nothing that resembles or relates to what this brother is talking about. Sexual prostitution. It's nowhere to be found in the Bible. There's no words for it, right? And then also, when you look into the context of the information, you don't see it, right? Now I'm coming from the Britannica. What does Britannica say about prostitution? It says the practice of engaging in relatively indiscriminate sexual activity in general with someone who is not a spouse or a friend in exchange for immediate payment in money or other valuables, right? So as we get into break down these words, it's telling us it's an exchange of services. I didn't know it was a refund, right? I didn't know prostitutes give refunds, right? From as long as I can remember, from pimping and pandering to hustling to macking, all of that, when it comes down to exchange, there's no refund. But this brother is going to go in the Bible and show us where prostitution is clearly at, where there's no refund being given, right? Where the woman literally takes the payment and go on to live the rest of her life as a prostitute. He's going to show us these things, these practices amongst Israel. Clearly in the scriptures, he's going to show us that. He's not going to show us commentary. He's not going to give us his feelings and his emotions, right? He's going to show us exactly what the word says in the Bible. because this is what this is about. This is not about the world's view on prostitution. This is not about the world's view on the Bible. It's about, do Israel practice prostitution? Did the ancient Israelites practice prostitution? So here's the Hebrew word that's used in light, or when you look into the word prostitution in the Bible, right? It's called zanah, H2181, right? It says to commit fornication, be a harlot, play the harlot, right? It also says to be unfaithful to God, figuratively. And the reason that is highlighted in red, because this is what we're talking about. This is what we're talking about. So when we do check into the information, when he do pull out these scriptures, the word prostitution, right, it should relate to someone having sex, not idol worship, not men carving things with their hands, doing the unthinkable. You understand what I'm saying? Burning incense to other idols and other gods, which is what our law tells us not to do, which is what I'm going to also bring out, right? So
time. All right, that's Brother Yashar. All right, Henry. I'm setting your time up now. You will have 15 minutes.
So I'm gonna start off.
Hold on.
Okay,
I'm giving you time. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, you will show my screen. So so I'm gonna show off the first example of prostitution. Did the nation, the people of Israel, have prostitution? Go to the next slide. This is an example of Judah. Judah, the founding father of the tribe of Judah, named after him, and this is Tamar. Tamar was born a Canaanite, but did she become a Israelite or a Hebrew, a follower of the God of Abraham? Yes. She married into the household. She married Judah's son, and the son died. And she was promised to another son, and that son died. So the last son did not want to deal with her. But we're going to start with Genesis 38, King James Version. I'm not using no new edition. King James Version is the source. We're going to start at 14 and go all the way to 21. And she put her widow gown, because her husband had died, her widow gown out for her, and covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnat. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judah saw her, the father saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face. And he turned unto her by the way and said, go to, I pray thee. He praying her, you feel? Praying compliment to her. Let me come unto you. Let me go in you. What it mean? For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. That means she was connected to the tribe. Let's go to the next slide. Now these are the verses. So we're gonna start at 15 because I had read 14. When Judah saw her, he thought her to be an harlot, because she had covered her face, And he turned unto her by the way and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come into you. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give it me? What kind of payment are you giving me? What will you give me to come inside of me, that thou may come inside of unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid. A kid is a goat. That means a sign of payment. Buy, barter, and trade. That's bartering from his flock. And he said, I will send a kid from my flock. And she said, whether thou give me a pledge, give me a pledge, give me your word, because your flock is over here and we are over here. We are separate. You might be lying to me. Give me a pledge till thee send it. And he said, what pledge shall I give thee? He asked her, what's the payment? What pledge, what should I give to go into you? And she said, give me your signet. Understand, a signet is a ring like an Egyptian cartouche. A cartouche is where they put the Egyptian pharaoh name into, so you will know that this is his temple. He dedicate this temple to the god. This is his burial chamber. This is his order. The cartouche would be on a ring, or it's a signet. It's your signature. You sign over your right in a red pen. That is your blood. That is your word. Not just she wanted the signet, she wanted his bracelet. When someone have a bracelet, that's to make sure nobody chop out their arm while they riding or in war. That's gold or silver bracelet to show high royalty. When people wear bracelet and chains and gold and stuff, that show that you got money, you got class. So he gave her bracelet. Now let's go back to the verse. And thou staff is in thee. So giving the staff, that's to lead the sheep, to show authority over a herd. For people who know about raising sheep, to give your staff what you beat the wolf with, what you guide your sheep and your herd. Even the Egyptian pharaoh would have a cross, like a whip, and also a shepherd staff in their hand, bowed across their chest to show authority and rulership. He gave that away to her as a pledge. That is in exchange for a service. That's not his wife, not his lover. But she changed garment and looked like a prostitute and got paid for the service. And she arose in the morning after she got the signet, the bracelet, and the staff, and he gave it to her and came into her. He went inside of her, and she conceded by him. And she arose and went away and laid by her veil from her and put on a garment of a widow. And Judah sent the kid. That means he sent the payment. He wrote a check. He wrote a check and he was planning on cashing it. But what happened when he was ready to go cash that check? He sent his friend. Verse 20. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend Adulamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. But he found her not. Then he asked the men of that plain, saying, where is the harlot, that which was openly by the wayside? And they said there was no harlot in this place. That means his daughter-in-law played the harlot, played the prostitute. She got paid. Did he ever, nowhere in that chapter, he received his goods back. He found out that it was his daughter-in-law and was ready to kill her till he found out that he impregnated a prostitute, which is a harlot, to be his daughter-in-law. Go to the next slide. According to Genesis 83, the unsuspecting Judah mistake his daughter-in-law Tamar from a veiled prostitute. For her service, Judah promised Tamar a sheep and gave her his seal to assurance that the debt would be honored. That's the insured. A seal was worn by the owner on a string of leather or other materials around the neck or waist or pin it to the garment. Their purpose was to serve as a personal signature on documents or package to guarantee authority or legal to show that it's legal. A legalized business deal as one signed a letter form in the present day. Where did I get this? www.worldhistory.org. This is not no website that somebody created. This is the worldhistory.org, an organization that is based on accurate history. According to the biblical account, Tamar was likely a Canaanite. Yes, she was likely a Canaanite. But she married into the Hebrews, and you are the first teachers of the children is the mother. Your mother, the one who wean you and teach you. So this woman and her kids, which King David and King Solomon is through her lineage, would be Canaanite also. This brother might say, oh, the Canaanites did this, but the Israelites was the Canaanites. So let's go to the next slide. This is it in Hebrew, the same verse. I wanted to make sure that y'all see. Go to the next. It show right here when you type in a translation of harlot. It show whore, prostitute, hooker, slut, harlot. You feel? Look at the family tree line. That Judah, his sons was supposed to marry her, but he impregnated her. She was a woman, a concubine. You is in his household. You belong to the Hebrews. Yo, teaching the lessons, the things y'all talk about is about the Hebrews. You is not a Canaanite no more. You is in the house of Judah, the original Judah, who the tribe is named after. Tamar brought forth who? Who she brought forth? She brought forth through her lineage, through her line. Because we know through the blood of the woman, the kid shall be known. King David and King Solomon. Go to the next slide. It go deeper. Even when we go into the Bible, more into the Bible, you have the book of Judge 16, chapter 16, verse 1, King James Version. I'm not using no other versions, only King James Version. Then went Samson to Gaza or Giza and saw there an harlot and went unto her. The strongest man, you feel, that God promised strength unto. God didn't take his strength away. God did not kill him when he went into the dollar. He went into a prostitute, a harlot. The first thing he did in the chapter, he did not go there to destroy people. He went in there to find him a harlot, a prostitute. What's the
Time.
next one? Okay.
All right. Woo. Brother Yashar, he's showing the lineage and everything. Come on, you ready to bring that heat? Let me know when you're ready.
I'm sharing my screen now.
All right.
All right. Okay. Can you hear me?
Someone mute your mic. It's an echo.
All right. All right. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yes.
All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
All right. So we're gonna deal with the first point that he made. Right. He was talking about uh, Judah, which I knew he would do. So let's just see. He said that he didn't receive his signet and his staff back. Well, right here in the information, right? What do it say here? It says right here, right? As she was being brought out, she sent a message to her father-in-law. I'm pregnant by the man who owns these. She said, and she added, see if you recognize whose seal and cord and staff these are. So you think that she just said, look, and she held it in her hands. Hey, Judah, look what I got. Do you know whose these is? And kept it? Stop playing, family. Stop playing. Talking about forefather of the tribe of Judah. She didn't receive a payment, right? Because you don't give back a payment. Nowhere on the planet, like I stated in my opening, nowhere on the planet in the history of prostitution is there a refund. But as we see here clearly, as he even just read himself, and then just clearly tried to get out of the context and say he didn't receive nothing. This is the dishonesty that I got to deal with today. All right. So let me get just debunking that real fast. Let me get back to my information on what I was talking about, right? Dealing with the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, right? Again, it says a primitive, and we're talking about the word prostitution. It says a primitive root word, right? This is what H2181 is. It's dealing with idolatry, family. Figuratively, to commit idolatry, the Jewish people being regarded as the spouse of Yahweh, right? So I'm pointing out clearly, right, that we got to deal with the information according to the time, not according to the way our minds move and think today. All right. So what did the biblical scholars, archaeologists, ancient historians, and the theologians have to say concerning what prostitution looked like with the ancient ancestors of Yahusharah, aka Israel? Right. It says fertility cults of Canaan, not Yahusharah. Only recently have scholars begun to unravel the complex religious rituals of Israel's Canaanites neighbors, right? The Canaanites, right? Israel's neighbors, the Canaanites. Much of our knowledge of the origins and characters of the fertility cults remain tentative and widely debated. So they're not sure what's really going on. What we do know reveals dark, seductive practices that continue to entice the people of God's chosen, right? It ain't saying that we do know it reveals the dark practices of God's people, but of the people that enticed the people. The people that was actually practicing these things were the Canaanites and other nations, right? What's the next point? He says some biblical scholars agree that it's hard to know why Yahweh's people failed to see that he alone had power over these things. Possibly their desert origins led them to question God's sovereignty over fertile land. Or maybe it was simply the sinful pagan practices that attracted them to Baal. So again, we see that it's not our practices. It's the pagans' practices. But we did see some things. We did see some things, right? What did some more scholars say? The biblical scholars and theologians agree the end of the chapter in the Bible warns the inhabitants of the land who are before you, Yahshua, committed all these abominations. The inhabitants of the land who are before you committed all these abominations, and the land became contaminated. It's not saying, right? And this is from David Kinghofer, same-sex marriage, ancient Canaan. So again, we seeing outside practices that you don't see in the Bible, nor do you see Israel practicing in the Bible. But according to people like Henry, he's going to show us these practices clearly in the Bible, right? Here we go. The Bash Library, Biblical Archaeological Review. Contrary to the claims of some 20th century scholarship, the Hebrew Bible never refers directly to, quote, prostitutes. Many modern Bible translations are simply misleading in this respect. Originally, Kadesh referred to consecrated maiden, not harlot. But biblical authors used it in the sense of harlot. So we see in here, family, that the misunderstanding of the outside world will play these type of word games and translate information where you can't even find those words in the ancient sources that they actually translate the information from, right? It says, while some scholars suggest that the temple prostitution was practiced in ancient Israel, Edward Lipinski argues that neither the Bible nor archaeology provides any clear evidence that Israelite religion heritage incorporated the sexual rites of Canaanite goddesses. Again, biblical archaeology.org, daily ancient cultures. You get it. Sources right there, right? Source and author, Herodotus. Now we have a Greek historian, right? Let's see what he say about this so-called practice, right? In his book, The Histories of Greek History, meaning inquiry, he relates the following information about ancient temple prostitutes. The foulest Babylonian customs is that which compels every woman of the land to sit in the temple of Aphrodite and have intercourse with some strangers once in her life. Many women who are rich and proud and disdain to mingle with the rest drive to the temple in covered carriages drawn by teams and stand there with a great retinue of attendant. So now we seeing right here that the first ladies that stood on the corner was not Israelite women, like this brother Henry just tried to make out. We see that it was done in Babylon. And who's seen this? Herodotus. This is a first-hand source of what's going on. He didn't speak on Israel, he spoke on Babylon. The foulest Babylonian customs, not the foulest Israelite customs. I'm just saying. Let's move on. Spiritual adultery, aka prostitution. Let's get into it because he's sure not, right? Because like I showed you earlier, what do prostitution mean according to Israel, according to the biblical narrative, right? And let's go right to the word. Again, we go right to Zanah 21:81. Being faithful to God, right? And then also in the breakdown of the information from the lexicon, Brown's Driver Briggs, Old Testament Hebrew, English lexicon, figuratively to commit adultery, right? So I'm showing you how this all lines up according to the biblical narrative, all right? Not just commentary, not just people running their mouth, not just people with their feelings, right? So let's see what Exodus 20 has to say. Thou shalt not have no other gods before me. Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven images or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. So here we see again, speaking about adultery, right? Adultery. This would be prostitution. This would be spiritual prostitution if we start making graven images, if we start putting other gods before our gods. This is where the Most High say we went a whoring in the lands, right? Because we went a whoring after other gods. We went worshiping and serving and looking after these other gods. This is not a practice of Yahusha. This is a practice of the other nations. I'm clearly showing you, family. Next slide, right? Leviticus 19:4. Turn ye not unto idols. Here we go. Once again, this is what we call prostitution, whoremonger, whoring, right? Turn ye not unto idols. Turn ye not unto whoring. Turn ye not unto prostitution, nor make to you yourselves molten gods. I am the Lord your power. Again, context, understanding of the information that's in front of us, understanding of where the source that we're debating. It's not talking about a woman on the corner receiving payment for her services. This is not what we're talking about, family. You won't find this in the scriptures. Again, I just debunked his so-called first point. So now we're moving on into the actual information so you can understand clearly when you see prostitution, what it's relating to. Adultery, not adultery, but idolatry, right? If it was said adultery, meaning sex with a married person, now we can have an argument. But we have no argument here. We have no argument here because everywhere that he's going is speaking of what? Right? So moving on, right? 1 Corinthians, wherefore, my dearly beloved, flee from adultery. Adultery is not supposed to be in Israel, family. Prostitution is not supposed to be in Israel, family. All right? Here we go. Again, what do it say? 2 Kings 18:4, right? Now it came to pass in the 3rd year of Hosea, right? So now we're talking about a righteous king, right? One of the sons of Hezekiah, king of Judah, right? What did he do? He removed the high places, verse 4. He removed the high places, broke the images, cut down the groves, broke in pieces and brazen serpents that Moses had made. For unto those days the children of Israel did burn incense to it, and he called it Nehushtan, excuse me. And again, this is not a practice. If it was a practice, he wouldn't have burned down anything. He would have left it up because this is what we do, right? Mind you, before Hezekiah became a king, we had strangers in the land. We had people in the land doing all types of abominable things. They erected so many temples within our lands that had to be destroyed. All right? It wasn't built by our hands, family. Right? What did 2 Kings say? 23:5. And he put down the idolatrous priest who the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense. Again, this is not talking about sex, family. This is talking about idol worship. Burn incense in the high places, in the cities of Judah, and in the places around about Jerusalem. Them also that burn incense unto Baal, to the sun, and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the host of heaven. Again, it's not talking about having sexual intercourse with women. This is not talking about paying services for anything. This is talking about adultery. Next slide, right? This is what we practice, because here we see what? Even the Assyrian kings understand our practice when it came to worshiping one power at one altar that did not consist of temple prostitutes or whores or whoremongers. What did he say? He said in 2 Chronicles 32:12, he said, have not the same Hezekiah taken away his high places and his altars, and commanded Judah and Jerusalem, saying, ye shall worship before one altar and burn incense upon it? So again, all of these things that you're talking about, or these talking points that you're trying to bring out that you're not showing in the scriptures, right, has nothing to do with prostitution, exchange of services. It has everything to do with idol worship. I'm going to keep driving that point home, right? Because he might even try and go here and say, oh, well, because he said the daughters of Zion, right? So here, let me correct this before he even open up his mouth and talk slick, right? And this is in the context of the information. Isaiah chapter 4, verse 4, but I'm gonna start at 3. And it shall come to pass that he that is left in Zion and he that remaineth in Jerusalem shall be called holy, even everyone that is written among the living in Jerusalem. When the Lord shall have washed away the filth of the daughters of Zion. He's still talking about all of us collectively. He's not talking about the women that you're talking about that was out there supposed to be prostituting, like those women in Canaan, like those women in Babylon, right? That I showed, that you haven't showed no woman in Israel living this lifestyle. I'll ask you, and I'll ask again, where is it according to the scriptures? Where is Israel practicing prostitution? You have yet to show us. Again, this brother is being dishonest with the
Time.
context of the information. Are you?
All right. All right. Let's get Brother Henry up here. Henry,
Yes.
are you ready?
Yes, I am.
All right. Let me. Get your time and everything together. All right. Prostitution. Let's go. You ready?
Okay. Go to the next slide. We gonna I'm gonna read straightly through. I won't paraphrase or add to the word. I'm gonna just go straight through the word so to not waste my time. Proverbs 7:10-23. He made a whole poem to prostitution. Verse 10, we're gonna start. And behold, there met a woman with the attire of an harlot and subtle of heart. She is loud and stubborn. Her feet abide not in her house. Now is she without, not now in the street, and laid in wait at every corner. So she caught him and kissed him, and with an impenitent face said unto him, I have peace offerings with me. Peace offerings. That's Hebrew temple worship. That's that religion worship. This day have I prayed. This another person praying to somebody. My vows. Therefore came I forth to meet thee. In this, it talk about she wearing a attire as a prostitute, harlot. When you look up the Hebrew word for harlot, the translation is always gonna mean prostitution or a promiscuous woman. But there's no attire for a promiscuous woman, but they do got hooker clothes, a hooker fit, a tramp stamp. They got so many signatures to see who is a prostitute. So go to the next slide. Oh, okay. This is dealing with the temple. Did they have prostitution in front of the tabernacle? First Samuel, second verse, 22nd verse. Now Eli was very old and heard all that his sons did unto all of Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. This dealing with sex. This dealing with women in front of the temple. and men going into the women of the temple. Go to the next slide. Man on man prostitution. Man on male. This right here will explain that the Israelites did the same thing the Canaanites did, because he said, where in the Bible? Where in the Bible it show these things? That they did what the Canaanites did. First King, 14th chapter, 24th verse, King James Version. And there was also Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations which the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. That's before the people was in the land before them. Now they the rulers of the land. What they doing? They doing all abominations that the people was doing before them. In the Bible, it's saying that they did the abomination. They laid with men. They laid with men. And they laid with women. Go to the next slide. This dealing with the daughters. What God told the daughters of Israel about prostitution and adultery and all so forth. Hershey, 4th chapter, 13, 14 verse. They sacrificed unto the top of the mountains, the temple, and burnt incense unto the hills. Religion. Under the oak and poplar and elk, because the shadow thereof is good. Therefore, your daughters shall commit. Therefore, your daughters shall commit. Hold them. They will be some hoes. And your spouse shall commit adultery. Adultery, harlot. Ain't Tamar was married, engaged, and committed adultery with her father-in-law. She became a prostitute. And I will not punish. God said he will not punish your daughters when they commit whoredom. When they become hoes, God won't punish them. Nine, your spouse when they commit adultery. For themselves are separate with hoes, and they sacrifice with harlots. Therefore, the people that does not understand shall fall. If the men doing it, why the women can't do it? That's what he's saying. God's saying your sons doing it, daughters of Israel. Who is them to judge? That's just like men today talking about, oh, a woman, a escort. You got men escorts out there. Who is you to judge? Go to the next slide. Temple prostitution, coat prostitution. We will see coat prostitution and religional prostitution or writ. You feel? Consistent of pay intercourse, perform in the contents of religional worship, probably as a form of fertility rich or divine marriages. Go to the next slide. In the Bible translation of temple prostitution, we have the QA, the Kodash. The Kodash is translated or transliterated as sodomite, to reference to homosexual man, whether or not the male temple prostitutes was heterosexual, homosexual, or even bisexual is not known. They don't know. And the uses of sodomite may be used to indicate homophobic. You feel? That show men workers. You feel? It don't have to be straight homosexual to be a sodomite. Returning to the words in the Hebrew words, they got kushah and zina. Kushah refers to the scarce prostitution, where zina refers to a simple common prostitute, much like porn of ancient Greek. They created words. The Hebrews have three words: one for the man prostitute, and two ones for regular prostitution: a street prostitute and an in the temple prostitute. Go to the next line. Here you go. Ancient sexual cult site discovered near Elat. My pronunciation of these Hebrew words wrong. See, you see the ding dong. You see the pussy, vagina. I'm sorry, vagina. Finding indicate 6,000, 8,000 years old stone pelvis in Israel. Not just one site. They found hundreds of sites of these in the land of Israel. Hundreds. We know concerning to the Bible, like my opponent lied and said you will not find in the Bible where the daughters was prostitution, doing hold'em. I showed that. I showed where the men was laying with men, sodomites. And I showed they was doing what the Canaanites was doing. God told the Israelites to destroy the Canaanites, get them out the way. What they did, they married into them. They married the Canaanites. We understand as logic by reading the Bible that God told the Israelites not to do these things, but they were stiff-necked. Why did God send the Babylonians? Why did God put the Persian to captivity? Because Israel was denying his words. They was not following his words. They was going on the temple, going back to Hersey chapter 4, verse 13 and 14. It say in 13, they sacrifice unto the top of the mountain and burn incense unto the hills and under oaks and poplar and elk trees, because the shadow thereof is good. Therefore, your daughter shall commit whoredom. These are English versions that translate and transliterate the Hebrew understanding. You feel? Yes, they do have Hebrew words dealing with coat prostitute. What he failed to realize when I said earlier, his friend was not able to get these things in the form of a prostitute, in the garments of a prostitute. She did not give the staff back and got the payment of the sheep. She was on the verge of death, of the threat of death, that she was forced to give these things to show that I got pregnated by you. I played the prostitute. That's what she was saying. I played the prostitute. I was the one in the veil. Now you about to kill me, but I have your kid. The man who these things belong to, when you sign a check and you go to the bank, that check is good as cash. Giving and planning on giving a sheep to her, people got to look at this. What is one sheep to a whole flock? You feel? She was able to inherit these things. A prostitute. A prostitute was able to accumulate wealth, property, stature. She played the prostitute and was able to have children for the big dog Judah. Big dog Judah went inside of her and he paid her his ring. She could take that ring and stamp on a piece of paper and say, hey, I would like to buy some cows and chicken. Then they would come to Judah and say, hey, Judah, you got to pay us for them cows and chicken. What you mean? You got a letter signed by you that say you want these things. She could do that. She could do that. With the signet, with the staff show that, hey, she have power and authority over sheep, over flocks, but she don't. It was promised to her. That's a pledge that he will pay her. I know a lot of people plan on paying a prostitute like, yeah, I'm gonna give it to you after the service, and then hurry up and get dressed and skip out, run out, and a prostitute mad. Or are they winging her on and she wind up stealing their clothes and running outside with all his belongings? No matter what the ancient understanding of prostitute, they was prostitute. When you look up the word harlot, it deal with prostitute. When you deal with the Hebrew words of prostitute, it dealing with indoor prostitute, the temple prostitute, and the outdoor prostitute. And even they said they made a whole poem about the prostitute going on the corner, never in her house, 1 foot outside of her house, on the corner, on the street. These things is in the Bible, and he want to fail to realize because for the people who is judging and for the people who is listening, write down these notes. Genesis 38, verse 14 to 21. Judge 16, verse 1. Proverbs 7 chapter 10 to 23. 1 Samuel 2nd chapter 22nd verse. 1 Kings 14 chapter 24th verse. Hersey, Hosea. If y'all pronounce it something else, I'm sorry, but I'm spelling it out for you. Hosea. Hosanna, whatever. Verse
Hosea.
chapter 4, verse 13, 14. These are verses that describing Hodom. It's saying Hodom. Horedom. Look it up. It's a hoe, a prostitute, in England, in America. And when you go deeper into Israel, even archaeology evidence show that they got ding dongs. They got
Okay. Time.
every.
Time.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, before we go on, I would like to say this to the audience because I see a lot of religious people are commenting. Now, because the brother have a speech impediment, doesn't mean that we bash him, okay? One, your God favors people with speech impediment. Let's not forget about Moses, all right? So, let's not do that. Let's try to be a little more respectful. All right. Yeah. Okay. And I see Brother Yashar. And the word I think he was looking for was Jose. Okay. You ready, Brother Yashar?
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right,
First
hold
thing
on. Let me get your screen up here before I start your turn.
Let me know when I go.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, first thing I'm gonna deal with is debunking things that he just got through talking about. Proverbs 7 is not a poem. Proverbs is words of a wise one. Wise sayings is what we call them. Right? And those wise sayings will teach us what to deal with and what not to deal with, right? So the woman, the harlot woman, is the one that we're not to deal with. It's very simple, but when you don't have no context and you don't have no understanding of the scriptures, you're going to make silly remarks like you just made, silly statements, coming at our people as if they don't have understanding for themselves, right? And that's a problem with a lot of people like you. You feel you think that you that don't study these scriptures know more than one that actually sit down and study and take the time to get into it. They don't play the games that you play. So when they hear the scriptures and they go back and they read those verses that you gave, they're going to see what I'm talking about. Right. So now let's get to 1 Samuel 2 and 22, where you said this was prostitution, right? So let me just show you right now. First off, I'm going to deal with Hosea 4, uh, 13 through 14. But let me show you what he didn't show you, family. Let me show you what he didn't show you, loved ones. And this is what I'm talking about dishonest people, right? Now, he should have told you the whole scripture. He gave you the whole scripture, right? The whoredom and wine and new wine take away the heart, right? So look, what did he say? He says, my people ask counsel at their stocks, and their staff declared unto them, for the spirit of whoredoms have caused them to err, and they have gone a whoring from under their God. So again, when you go and look up the word whoring and a whoredom and all these words that's being used, it goes right back to what I told you here. What I told you. To commit fornication, be a harlot, play the whoredom. To be unfaithful to God. What did the information just say? Right? What did it just say? That he didn't want to show you guys in the scriptures. A whoring from under God. So that means that we're moving away from the covenant that we made. Right? Then it goes down to say what? They sacrifice upon those tops of the mountains and burn incense upon the hills and under oaks and poplars and elms, because the shadow thereof is good. Therefore, their daughters shall commit whoredom, not prostitution. And those spouses shall commit adultery. This is not talking about prostitution. Again, I ask you to go to the word in the Hebrew. Can you do that? Where this word is, like I just did? Here? Because see, when you look it up, this is what you're going to go to. So I don't know why you keep playing games with the family, right? And acting as if they don't have no understanding. So again, now let's get to 1 Samuel 2 and 22 with what you brought out, right? This is what you brought out, right? Now Eli was very old and heard all this that his sons did unto all Israel, and how they lay with the women that assembled at the door of the tabernacle. So that's saying that these brothers went to the temple and seen the sisters there and was like, oh, man, let me go holler at this one. And because they didn't commit, this is what they were doing. They didn't go to those women and say, hey, I got this money here. Let me pay you for this service. You just made that up in your own little screwed up brain. Because any real man is not taking that like that. They're not taking it like that just because they see whoredom there. They have to make sense and put it in context. Is there any money being exchanged anywhere, according to the information? Let's see if the practice continued as we scroll on down, right? As we scroll on down, what did he say about his sons, right? He says, okay, hold on. Wherefore God in Israel did they house and house of day. Behold, the days come. Cut them. Man, I just had it. Well, in the scripts, I just had it, family. I apologize. I'm just trying to rebut this brother, but I didn't write it down. But in these scripts here, it talks about how the sons of Eli changed their ways and got back into the good graces of the Most High. So again, we're talking about the practice of prostitution within Israel. You won't find it nowhere. All right. So now getting back to my information and getting back to what we need to really get into, right? Understanding spiritual idolatry and what it looks like and what it is in Israel. Because this brother here clearly don't understand nothing in the context of the information that's being presented and that he's even presenting. Right. Again, I dealt with that. So here we had Deuteronomy chapter 23, right? There shall be no whore of the daughters of Israel, nor a sodomite of the sons of Israel. Thou shalt not bring the hire of a whore or the price of a dog into the house of the Lord thy power, or any vow. For even both these are abominations unto the Lord. So again, that's not a practice of Israel. It's not something that we did. That's not something that we taught our women to do and move as. Right? Again, 1 Corinthians chapter 6, right? Know ye not that the unrighteous shall inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers. Where does it say prostitution? Or where is it saying that the daughters of Israel or the men of Israel are being whores, right? It speaks about adulterers, meaning those who sleep with married people, whether you're a man or a woman, right? It talks about the fornicator, for those who are just out there randomly just having sex freely, like the brothers was doing at the temple, not buying sex. Where's prostitution in these things that the Most High is talking about? There's nowhere to be found. Let's continue, right? We should see prostitution somewhere in these acts, right? Now the works of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness. I already told you what fornication and adultery is. Lasciviousness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, variance, emulation, wrath, strife, sedition. Where's prostitution, brother? All these things, that we will not inherit the kingdom. I'm not saying prostitution is something great, but the name of the title of the debate is, did Israel practice prostitution? No, we did not. And even when you talk about Samson didn't pay for no sex. There was no exchange of anything when you read the scriptures. That's what prostitution means. Where's the act of these people giving women anything? Bruh, again, a refund is not prostitution, brother. I don't know how you don't understand that, right? So then here we go, Jude 1:7, right? It talks about Sodom and Gomorrah and the cities about them in like manner, giving themselves over to fornication and going after strange flesh. That's what they're talking about when you talk about man on man, woman on woman, going after strange flesh. That's what you should read in the scriptures if that's what you're talking about when you talk about homosexuality. That's not what you read in the scriptures at all. It's not what you read. You read something completely different, and then you made it up again in that screwed up brain you got working over there. I don't understand how that even figures or even formulates in your mind if you one that has clear thinking. If you one that don't have a pornographic mindset. Because only one that thinks like that has to have that type of mindset. Because when I read what you posted, I don't see what you spoke out of your mouth. Right? Are set forth for an example, suffering the vengeance of eternal fire. So again, we're seeing here that these actions of these other people like Sodom and Gomorrah, these nations, right? Babylon, right? Canaan, they're going to suffer eternal fire. This is what the Most High is telling us to stay away from. But this brother is telling us that we literally practice these things here. We literally practice the sodomy. We literally practice prostitution like you seen in Babylon, like Herodotus showed you. I don't see it nowhere in the scriptures, nowhere that this man pointed out. Not even when you pull up Samson. Revelations, right? What do we say? He says, but the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers, idolaters, all liars, shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. Brother, where's this prostitution at, brother? Where's this prostitution at, brother? You say it was prostitution. You know why idolatry is highlighted? Because prostitution leads back to that word, idolatry, right? It also leads back to adultery, but you don't see adultery right here. You see idolatry, right? But we should see prostitution, brother, because that's an abomination. Because the Most High told us not to make our daughters whores. And us as men not to be whoremongers. Romans, what? So now, he's talking to who? Yasharal in Rome. Why is he talking to us in Rome? Because we outside of our land amongst other wicked ass people, excuse my language, family, pagans, right? That didn't understand and didn't follow the ways of the Most High, which is righteousness, right? This is what we see here. This is why He was writing to us in this fashion, in this way. And what did he say? And I'm going to start at verse 21. He says, because that when they knew God, they glorified him not as God, neither were thankful, but became vain in their imaginations. Just like you imagining pornography in the scriptures in the ancient time, imagining prostitution as if it moved in modern times. That's vain imagination. And their foolish heart was darkened, professing themselves to be wise, just like this brother who I'm debating right now, professing himself to be wise, thinking he know the scriptures when he don't study the scriptures. He read it like a novel. He only read it to try and make fun and point uneducated fallacies out, stuff that's not even worth debating, right? And change the glory of the uncorruptible God into an image made like the corruptible man, to birds and four-footed beasts. What are we talking about? We're talking about idols. He's telling us to stay away from the idol worship, the things that they were doing in Rome, the things that they were doing in Greek, with the Greeks, right? Idol worship, prostitution, spiritual prostitution, brother. That's what the Bible teaches us about. Building idols, making idols with our hands, getting on our knees, worshiping idols, burning incense to these idols. That is what you call prostitution according to the scriptures. Not that weird stuff you got going on in your brain. What do Proverbs say? Again, wise sayings. To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue, or a strange woman. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids. For by means of a whorish woman, a man is brought to a piece of bread, and the adulteress will hunt for the precious life. Again, we see these things happening in ancient time, where we even see the most prestigious woman, the rich woman, on the corners, to where we see now the lowest of the low out here. Don't care who she dealing with, and I guarantee you, you go and you try and have some interaction with that, and you make that transaction, I guarantee you, you ain't getting no refund. Try it. Try it. We ain't talking about broke brothers. We ain't talking about scammers that want to try and get something and then run out because they cowards. We talking about ones that's going to pay for the service and then try and go back and get it. It's not happening because it don't never happen. Proverbs chapter 6. But whoso committeth adultery with a woman lacketh understanding. He that doeth it destroyeth his own soul. So again, we see here that he's telling a man that, yeah, you commit adultery, right? You do these things. You destroying your own soul. So where's the practice at, brother? Where are we practicing this at, bro? Where are we practicing this at? You can't pull out, oh, one person, two person. You got to pull out us as a nation, us as a tribe, just moving around, being whoremongers and just purchasing whores everywhere in the scriptures. You don't see it nowhere. Matthew chapter 5. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you, whosoever looketh on a woman to lust after her. So now we're talking about, again, if we see a woman out here standing on the corner, do we approach that woman? Or do we turn our head and we look away? This is the practice of Israel. Where's the practice of us purchasing women, paying for it? I'm still waiting for you to bring that out. 1 Kings 14 and 24. And there were also Sodomites in the land, and they did according to all the abominations of the nations, which the Lord cast out before the children of Israel. So now here again, let me break this down because this brother clearly didn't take it into context. And there were Sodomites in the land. Sodomites meaning that they were in our land, and they did according to all the abominations. So it wasn't Israel. It was the nation that was in the land of Israel who we cast out. That's what the scripture is talking about.
All right, family. Now we going to the questioning and answer round. You guys, here's the call-in number. We'll let you guys call in a few moments. Okay. Henry, you want to kick off the question and answer round? Since you started first.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. My my first question, my first question is this. Did the Israelite practice other religion outside of worshiping God?
That ain't got nothing to do with the debate, man. That ain't got nothing to do with the title. And to answer your question clearly, that's what you call spiritual idolatry. Next question.
So you answer the question, yes, they did worship other gods.
So our worship according to
So
the scripture was this. Hold on, because I still got 2 minutes to answer the question. My answer to it, right, according to the narrative, the Bible narrative, not you, right, that I pointed out according to scripture, we were making idols with our hands. We were burning incense to these idols. We were doing all these things that was not according to our way of living, right? We were bowing down to these idols. That's what you call spiritual idolatry. What you talking about, you ain't pointed out nowhere. So don't try and use my answer and conflate it without no context. This is why I'm using my 2 minutes to give the context because I knew what you was about to do. Now I'm done with my answer.
All right. Next question. You on mute. You on mute, Henry.
my my next question is, did the Israelites have spiritual prostitution?
I just answered that. Your first question. That's my answer.
Just for the audience and the judge to hear you again, did they have spiritual prostitution? Yes or no?
Yeah, I pointed that out clearly in my debate. Yeah.
Okay. Last question. Can a prostitute accept anything outside of money?
According to the definition, yep, she can. But according to the definition, there's no refund of whatever she receives.
So that answer is yes. Buy, barter, and trade. Yes. Okay. He answered my questions. I'm done with my questions.
All right, Yashar. Are you ready?
Okay. So you went to Hosea 4:13 through 14. Can you tell a family why you didn't read verses 12 like I read that give you the context
I did not.
14?
Okay. I did not read it all because the time. I didn't want to read the whole chapter for the time. But I got to the main point where it literally opened itself up to show a religional prostitution, not spiritual, but religional prostitution, where they worshiped up different gods. Their daughters was able to do what the men do with hodom, and when we look up the word hodom in the Greek and the Hebrew word, it means sexual immorals. Sexual immorals. So I wanted to pinpoint them two statements in that chapter to show that it was sexual immorals going on under a
Okay.
religion sexual code.
Okay. Did you show in that chapter and verse, did you show the family and the judges that that's what that word mean according to the Hebrew? Or did you
Yes.
or did,
Later on,
oh,
I
wait.
showed that the word Kadash means sodomite. The word Kadosh means scarce prostitute. and the word zina mean common prostitute. Like the word you showed, ZANAH, that's the common prostitutes that was on the streets,
So
co- uh,
you show,
containing to the Hebrew.
listen to my question clearly. You show the family and the judges in this debate that those definitions you read off are directly from the word that's in Hosea chapter 4. Is that what you're saying to us? Because what
So,
I seen just a whole bunch of words. It wasn't attached to no chapter and verse at all.
so, as I answer your question, I'm gonna say this. In the verse it say, "For themselves are separate with hoes." It say hoes. It don't say nothing else. It don't say hold them. That your definition of it is straightly say hoes. The word in Hosea, it call them
Okay, that's
hoes.
2 minutes on that question. Next question.
Okay.
So we clearly got an understanding that this brother don't understand what he's reading, and he didn't even understand the question that I asked. Right. So now it's my last question. Right. Um, can you show us? Right. Can you show us a chapter and a verse? Right. Outside of Judah. Right. To confirm that we gave funds for services. Can you show us to confirm, like I said, that we gave services for prostitution? Can you show us anywhere in the Bible that we pay for that we pay for sex?
Yes, anyone can when they go into the story of Mary Magdalene. You said inside the Bible, you didn't say what part. In the New Testament, Mary Magdalene was a prostitute and they was ready to stone her and denounce her as a prostitute. Even in Jesus' time, there was prostitution. Go into the New Testament, you will find by looking up Mary Magdalene.
Okay, why don't you pull that for him real quick? Pull that for the family and the judges and read that to them real quick. That Mary Magdalene
I don't have
was
a
paid.
Bible right here, but this for everyone who want to find a story about a prostitute dealing with money, paying, and how the priests treat the situation would have to read the story about Mary Magdalene. That's how you find it.
Okay, so this it, family. So I'm gonna just say this, and that's it for me. When you come to a debate, right, you're supposed to make sure you got an answer, and you can source that up, or you can go right to that, or you can tell them where to go. Like to sit here and tell them to read that, and you not present that for them to answer the question, or you don't want to take the time to do that. Don't do that because that'll hurt you in the debate.
Okay, so let me
Thanks.
say
Now,
this. Yashar, you asked him a question, but it wasn't enough time. Y'all was out of time for that question, anyways. So, now we're gonna get to. Okay, judges, I got a question. Do you guys want to do? Well, let's get to the judges, and then we'll get to the call-ins. For those of you that want to weigh in or anything, we're gonna get to the judges, and then we will be to you all. Alrighty, judges.
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
So you gonna get to the callers and let them call in
Okay, you
with
want to
the
go to the
question.
callers first?
Yeah, and
Okay.
then we'll end it off with the judgment.
Okay. Okay. So, callers, the numbers on the screen. If you guys would like to call in.
How many judges do we currently have on the panel? society?
We only have two. We
Oh,
supposed to have three,
oh.
but he dropped off. He tried to come back in. I tried to add him, and I don't know.
So how are we going to
I did see him
properly
in the comment.
uh
I'm texting him
pro-
now
yeah,
to
text
ask him if he want to call in or how would he want to place his judge.
yeah,
His
so
judgment.
we can properly have a judgment for the debate. Since it's only two judges now that's currently on the call, we can get that other judge to
Okay, I got you.
give his somebody calling in.
Yeah, someone's
Wow.
calling in.
I'm gonna go on mute.
Greetings and thank you for calling in. State your name and where you're calling from.
This is Zion, the War Child. I'm calling from Syracuse, New York. You know who it is? Smushinator. And I want to respond to my brothers. You know what I'm saying? My two brothers. Henry, you did very well. I watched you. You're doing good. Can y'all hear me? Am I on it? Because I had to mute my screen. So I don't know if y'all hearing me.
Yes, they can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Henry did really good. I think, I think both of y'all did very well. Yeah, of course, you know what I'm saying. Yashar, he's like, you know what I'm saying, the multiverse version of me on some other side. Henry, you know what I'm saying, you did very well. The hold'em, that to me was like, it was hilarious and probably one of the best parts of the debate. But you pulled out the dildos, and I never seen that before. So that that was magnificent. You know what I'm saying? That was good evidence. You know what I'm saying, for prostitution in Israel. You know what I'm saying? So on that part, I got to give you, you know what I'm saying, props. I got to give you props for your argumentation. I think the only place where you might have dropped the ball was on Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene is not the prostitute in the scripture that God was and that the New Testament was speaking of. That was a popular misnomer. Actually, Mary Magdalene, when it says Magdalene, she comes from an absolutely rich family, and she was one of the greatest financial supporters of Yeshua's ministry. She wasn't a whore. She didn't have to be. You know what I'm saying? She was rich. She was richer than all of them. All of the 12 disciples. I mean, she was actually Jesus' greatest supporter. So that's the only place that I would say that you dropped the ball. Just there. Yashar, you did very well. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I don't really have too much contention with what you said. I think Henry proved the dildos and all of that stuff. I think the main contention that I have is whether we're talking about spiritual whoredom or fleshly whoredom. You know? And I'm not saying that fleshly whoredom didn't happen. That fleshly whoredom didn't happen. You know what I'm saying? It happened all over the place. But yeah, you know what I'm saying? I think both of y'all brothers did good. You know what, Henry? This is your first time back in the ring for how long? How long have you been? How long has it been since you've been back in the ring? This is your first debate for a while, so I'll give it to you, bro. You got some good work. You got some good chops in there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know what I mean? Big shout out to both of y'all brothers. I'm not a judge, so I'm not gonna make a judgment on who won or not. So, much love.
All right. Hey, Zion.
Yes.
Question. Okay, so what was your strong points that you think that Yashar brought out outside of the question and answer round? Like,
Yashar. Okay, so all right. The question and answer round, I was a little deflected apart. I came in a little bit late.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
Brother Yashar was pretty consistent with his argument and the scriptures that he was bringing out. I'm pretty knowledgeable, especially since last Sunday with Aaron. But Yashar always has a strong argument. He's very biblically versed. You know what I'm saying? And I think Henry is very biblically versed. You know what I'm saying? I think that the only place that I saw a hole with Henry's argument was well, there's two holes. I didn't know whether he was arguing physical prostitution or physical whoredom or physical or spiritual whoredom, and that's where I was kind of confused at the end. Yashar is very consistent. I've debated. I think we've chopped it out. I don't think I've ever debated Yashar officially, but me and him gotten into it. So I'm pretty keen on his argumentation style. I think Henry did very well. You know what I'm saying? And he's worthy to get, you know what I'm saying, his head smushed.
All righty. Thank you, Zion.
Yeah. So, is it all right that I speak?
Go ahead.
Okay, so this is what wasn't proven. Yes, it was found in what you call the land of Israel, or AKA the land of Canaan. What was not made clear in that PowerPoint that he showed, that information that he showed, that Israel made that. That's what was not clear, and that's what was not in none of the information, because you barely could even read it. That's why I was up there like this, trying to read it and see what it said, and I didn't see nowhere where it said that Israelites created those so-called dildos, right? So if he can prove it, okay. But to sit there and show that and run your mouth, but the information don't line up with what you're saying, that's a problem.
Okay. We have another caller. All right. State your name and where you calling from.
Yo, this Jeremiah, please say the guy. CEO of the Source Debate League, man. What's going on, family? Precepticons in the building, man. My question is for Henry. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, he can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, my question is in Zechariah chapter 2, verse 6. Was the Lord telling prostitutes to flee? Because it says ho ho. If you could read that for us, Zechariah 2 and 6. I want to know, was the Lord talking to prostitutes?
Okay, to answer your question, I gave the verses that I read up on. Any verses outside of what I read, you would have to read yourself.
I can't hear anybody. Is he talking?
1 minute, Henry.
I said the verses.
Hold on, he can't hear you, Henry. Hold on. Jeremiah, mute your phone. You probably have to listen on your system to his answer. Because if I take my headphones out, it's gonna echo horribly.
So for me to answer your question, I cannot answer your question. I'm not familiar with that verse at this time. I don't have a Bible on me. I gave the verses that I have read for that confirm that there was religional prostitution. And this is what I want people to understand. There was religional prostitution. That's prostitution in the temple, outside of the temple. This is physical prostitution. This is not spiritual prostitution. When you say hoe, there's no spiritual hoe. When they say whores and whoredom, everybody can give their interpretation. But we know by listening to it, the brother said that there was prostitution. He said there was prostitution. Just because he said it was spiritual prostitution, we cannot stop and say, wait a minute. Yeshua said prostitution. And when we pull up in 1 King 14,
You robot Henry.
Hey, he cast them people out. They was doing these things before Israel, and when Israel came, they was doing the same abomination. God made all of Israel flee. The 10 lost tribes at the top, Israel and Judah split. The tribe got stuck, flee. They fly.
You robot Henry.
The God say anything, they fled. They fled.
Alrighty. Do we have anyone else that would like to call in? All right. So we're going to get to the judges. Okay. For this debate, did the people of Israel have prostitution? So, what judge would like to go first?
I can go first. This is RJ at the Nerdy Brew. What's good, brothers? Y'all did a very good debate. I took down this information because y'all both gave powerful points. And with the points that y'all gave, I'm only basing this off of the debate itself. So how y'all presented the information is gonna go for how my judgment is. So with Yashar, when he brought out the etymology about idolatry and prostitution and how it correlates with Israel in itself and how it was a spiritual connotation, that's a point for Yashar. How Henry brought out Tamar, the thing about Tamar, and I love how he brought out the signets and like the payment and the goats. That was very good, but Tamar, she wasn't Israel. She ended up being grafted in. And then with Yashar, he brought out the source from that man David, and he was saying the surrounding nations were the ones that were practicing those acts. That was something that really stood out. And then with Henry, you brought out that article about Times Israel, and then you also brought out the sex cults and Kings 14 with Rehoboam. That is a very like profound scripture, bringing out that was a thing that happened and there was reformation there. But let me not have my own thoughts on that. And then you got Yashar with the context of Hosea. He said, let's bring out the entire chapter. And when he went back and read the verses beforehand, that was what just led to further in his argument. And then also with the exchange of how prostitution works, Yashar was bringing that out, that there has to be a refund or to make it a full transaction. So all in all, with all that being said, and then when it came to the Q&A, I definitely, because it was half and half for me, but when Henry brought up Mary Magdalene, that was kind of like a kill shot in the sense of that of what Zion brought out. That's a misnomer. That was a what do you call it? It was a myth that was brought out in 1591. She actually do come from money, so that's a thing. So all in all, when it comes to just this debate and how y'all present it, y'all both went blow for blow. Y'all both brought in valuable information to the context. But I will have to say that Yashar gets the vote for me.
All right. Prodigy?
Yo, can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Absolutely. All right. Before I go into my thoughts on this debate and give my final judgment, was you Ivory? Was you able to get in contact with the third judge for this debate?
No, I inboxed him.
Okay.
And still nothing.
Okay. All right. Because I definitely wanted this to be for all the judges to be on the panel, for this to be a fair debate amongst both of these brothers. So we'll definitely figure out what we're gonna do with that.
Okay.
But as far as is how I personally feel about the debate, I just want to say that I'm proud of both of these brothers for the hard work and the dedication, the energy, all of the time that they put into bringing forth this information to the community. Henry, this is my first time hearing this brother debate. He did an excellent job. Yashar, we already know him from the community as also bringing his sources and his information and how he present his powerpoints is definitely a plus when it comes to the information. Um, now, I have a couple of questions before I actually give my judgment. Um, when Henry first his first round, when he brought forth the information on, I believe it was it the Tamar, I think it was Judah and Tamar, or was it Jacob and Tamar?
Yeah,
No,
I believe it
Judah.
was Jacob and
Judah.
Tamar, right? Judah and Tamar, right? So let me actually go to I believe that was Genesis 38 that the brother went into. And um based off of um how um I read the actual text based on the context of the scripture, and I just want to go to this right quick. This, I believe it was Exodus. I'm sorry, Genesis 38 verses. Uh, what was the verse here? I believe it started with 15. And I'm just going to read this right quick. It says, "When Judah saw her, he thought she was a prostitute, for she had covered her face, not realizing that she was his daughter in law. He went over to her by the roadside and said, 'Come here, let me sleep with you. And what will you give to sleep with you?' She asked. 'I'll send you a young goat from my flock,' he said. 'Will you give me something as a pledge until you send it?' She asked. He said, 'What pledge should I give you?' 'Your seal and its cord and the staff in your hand,' she answered. So he gave them to her and slept with her, and she became pregnant by him. After she left, she took off her veil and put on her widow's clothes again. Meanwhile, Judah sent the young goat by his friend, right, in order to give his pledge or his word. So to me, I know the brother Yashar said, what brother sleeps with a prostitute, gives her something as a payment, and then come back for the refund? Um, to me, how I looked at this verse is that it kind of remind me of a pawn shop. You go to a pawn shop and you bring merchandise, whether it's gold or something material, whatever the case may be, and you give it to the pawn shop, and they give you a payment, and the pawn shop says, "Listen, man, if you want to get your items back, you gotta bring us back our money on top of interest." The pledge was his word. His word was the pledge. But what he initially offered Tamar was the goat. That was the payment, not the staff or the seal that she asked for. That was just collateral. that was collateral. So basically, she's saying, listen, I mean, you can say what you want to say, but you got to give me something as collateral until you give me the actual payment. So the actual payment was the goat, which Judah actually ended up giving to Tamar. So it wasn't a refund. It was him actually standing on his word and him saying, "Listen, man, for to let you know that I'm being serious about this. Here's my staff. Here's my seal. Trust me, you gonna get that goat." So that was just used as collateral. So he did give her the goat, but if he didn't give her the goat, then she would keep that seal in his staff. So he did stick to his word, and according to the text, to me, this is definitely as as how Judah seen her. She was definitely a prostitute. As how he looked at her, even though that was really his daughter-in-law. So to me, Henry won that point on that one. To me, how I look at that, this he definitely looked at her as a prostitute. This is why he offered her a goat, and as collateral, he gave her the seal and the staff. Once he gave her a goat, he came back to get his seal and his staff. Um, but this is the question that I have for Henry. This is where it it gets iffy. Henry, you brought up I believe it was you brought up it was an article from the Times of Israel, correct? Can you hear me, Henry?
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
so
yes.
you brought up a article from the Times of Israel, and I believe it was, let me see if I can, I believe it was ancient sexual cult sites discovered in Israel, right? Now, my question to you is this: in this article that you brought up about ancient sexual cult sites, you brought up they had stone figures that were shaped like phalluses or penises. They also had rock formations or stone formations shaped like vaginas. Um, and yes, they did. According to this article, they found it in what would be recognized today as ancient Israel. But in this article, it says that these these artifacts date back to 8,000 years ago. So my question to you would be: was ancient the Israelites we see in the Bible, do they date back during the time that these artifacts were discovered in Israel? Because it says 8,000 years ago. So can we find ancient Israelites in Israel at this time? And were they, because this would be a Neolithic period. Can we find ancient Israelites in what we know as Israel today, and would they be associated with making these artifacts from eight
Okay,
thousand years ago?
so I brought the article out to show that they did have sex cults in that land.
Hmm. Right.
Before or after Israel,
Hmm.
it is not known when or if the people of Israel even existed.
Okay.
But in the Bible, First King chapter 14, 24 verse, they telling you that hey, the Israelite practiced the behaviors of the people before them. If Israel was not in the land and that site was a site for people who the Canaanites who was in the area, God told the people of Israel, do not mate with them, do not do their ways. But over and over in the Bible, we'll see a connection, like it said in First King. And there was also sodomite in the land. And they did according to all the abominations of the nation which the Lord cast out before the children of Israel.
Hmm.
So
Okay.
if that artifacts was there before Israel, the Israelites was following in according to the Bible,
Mhm.
the Israelites was following the beliefs and practices of the people in the land, the Canaanites.
Okay. The reason why I asked you that is because if we're going by the dating system they use, which is I'm pretty sure it was what we know is radio carbon dating on these certain artifacts 8,000 years ago, that we don't have any evidence of Israelites actually being in the land during the Neolithic period of what is known as modern day Israel. So it wouldn't line up with actual Israelites being associated with creating this art, these artifacts. Are they saying that who was ever in the land at that time were associated with some type of sect cult and also making these artifacts? Absolutely. From what I know, as far as um, um, when we can date the actual Israelites coming into the land of Canaan, um, especially according to the biblical text, I would say that they had absolutely nothing to do with this. Um, this was some type of Neolithic people who even a consensus of scholars don't know. They just know that it definitely had to be a cult of some people at that time that was worshiping things like the phallus and the vagina, because we don't have any evidence of Israelites actually being in the land at that time. 8,000 years ago from today would be about 5,900 BC. So Abraham wasn't even around at that time, so we definitely know that this were not Israelites. So I would definitely have to say that that was not associated with the children of Israel or prostitution based on the dating system. Based on the dating system, so that's definitely a point that I would have to take from Henry. Um, what else did I have for Henry? Also Henry, um, I felt like Henry also brought up a couple of scriptures um, that had absolutely nothing to do with prostitution. Like I believe it was First Samuel chapter 2. First Samuel chapter 2. And I believe it was chapter 2. What was the verse? Matter of fact, let me
22.
for 22. Okay, cool. So let me
Yeah.
go here to First
First
Samuel
Samuel,
chapter
second
2, verse
chapter, 22
22.
verse.
Okay, cool. So let me go here just right quick, and so I can give you a reason as to why uh when I finally come to my final decision as to why. So we see First Samuel chapter 2, verse 22, and it says, "Now Eli, who was very old, heard about everything his sons were doing in all of Israel." So we see that when Eli became a certain age, he got word back about what his sons was doing in Israel, and it says how they slept with women who served at the entrance of the tent of the tabernacle. Um, so he heard about how his sons were sleeping with women who were attending the entrance of the tabernacle. Nowhere in this verse do I see anything that has to do anything with prostitution. Um, so even when you go into the word lay, which I believe was the translation that you use, it does, according to the lexicon, that word lay, it does mean to actually lay down, to have sexual relation. So I just wanted to ask Henry right quick, this verse that you brought out, what made you believe that this verse had anything to do with prostitution when the word prostitution is not associated in the context of this verse in First Samuel chapter 2, verse 22.
So when I brought out that verse, I was showing how it was women in the temple that was available for sexual pleasure.
Okay. 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 Cool. Um. Yeah. So I'm sorry,
They
brother.
was
You kind of breaking
available
up. Yeah, brother. You in the matrix, brother
okay.
Henry. You in the matrix.
Hello?
Okay. There you go. Yeah. There you go, brother. So start over again so we can hear you
Okay.
clearly because you was breaking up.
So I was showing that in that verse, not particularly dealing with prostitution, but dealing with the women who was at the temple was available for the priests. It was temple prostitutes. Women that be at the temple was not just women to serve, cleaning the temple or oracles. They was they was eligible for the men of Israel to have sex with.
Okay.
That it
Okay.
was women in the temple that the
Mhm.
priests and even
Mhm.
the kings.
Right. Okay. Okay. Cool. The reason why I asked you that question is because if you are uh, trying to associate the word prostitution with certain scriptures or the context of the scripture, I was definitely going to the lexicon to see if if how I can associate certain words or certain scriptures, how I can associate it with the word of prostitution according to the lexicon definition. And that one just didn't line up. I definitely see what you're getting at, but when you actually go into the lexicon, it just wasn't adding up to me. But I did give Henry um, that definitely that first round. To me, he did prove that Tamar was looked at by Judah as an actual prostitute. Henry did definitely nail that one. I just had a couple of issues with the Times of Israel article because Israelites didn't even exist 8,000 years ago, so that had nothing to do with them. Even though they found these artifacts in modern day Israel, and also this scripture right here, First Samuel 2:22, it doesn't says anything about prostitution. So moving along with Brother Yashar. I think Brother Yashar did a great job in presenting his information. Um, I think that he also proved that there were what is known as spiritual prostitution that was going on in Israel, just not physical but also spiritual. But there's also some questions that I have for Yashar because Yashar stated that words like idol or idolatry was associated with the word prostitution. When I looked up the words idol or idolatry or idols with an S in the lexicon, I didn't see the word prostitution associated with these words. So I want to ask Brother Yashar, can you um, either or just tell me? You don't got to share your screen, brother. Can you tell me where I can find the word prostitution being associated with the word idol, idols, or idolatry according to the lexicon?
Well, what it was is I went to the word whoremonger. Uh, was it Ezekiel? I can't remember where I went to the word for whoremonger, but it was in one of these verses that we pulled up. And when I went there, this is what it broke down. What I had showed earlier today in my presentation, right, which was Zana, right, and that deals with fornication, being a harlot, playing a harlot, right. So that would be dealing with what we talk about being unfaithful to God, and that deals with idolatry, right? When you talk about being unfaithful to God, it's not talking about sexual unfaithfulness. You understand what I'm saying? Dealing with the whoremonger word. So that's what I was meaning when I said the word is related to idolatry. And when you talk about idolatry being the main spiritual prostitution that Israel dealt with, because again, you don't find it nowhere in the scripture like that. You only will see whoremonger, and that will relate you back to Zanah, which is dealing with fornication, idolatry, and so forth and so on.
Okay, are you finished, brother? I don't want to interrupt you while you
Yeah, yeah, I'm
going through this. Oh, okay, cool. So yeah, the reason why I asked you that because when you were when you were trying to associate the word prostitution with the word idol, idols or idolatry, I I went straight to the lexicon because this was something I never heard before, and I was like, wow, I'm interested in seeing if it lines up with what you were saying, but I went to it and I didn't see it. But I definitely hear how you're trying to correlate the two. But I will say um, that there were, I believe what both of these brothers brought out. I believe that certain points Henry showed that there were actual prostitution um, in as far as especially when it comes to the Judah and Tamar story. I definitely believe that Henry got that. I also see spiritual prostitution as far as what Yashar brought out, especially going into the etymology. So I see both of these brothers showing and proving um their premise and their proof for me. What Henry showed with the that Times of Article Israel, when he first showed that, for me, I was like, it's a wrap for Yashar. If he could, if this article is saying that this was going on during the time of the Israelites, for me, that would have been it for Yashar. We have actual archaeological evidence that the children of Israel were practicing these type of sect cults and things dealing with what we see as today as dildos and sex cults and prostitution is. But when I went to the article, it said 8,000 years ago. So that kind of just just kind of put a hold on how I was going to initially judge this debate. So based off of the information that Henry brought to me, I think Henry definitely won that first round. I think that Yashar, his second round was excellent. I get a second round to Yashar. But based off of the questions, I would. It's kind of a draw right there. So just based off of the information that both of these brothers brought forth, um, Yashar proven that there is spiritual prostitution. Henry proven that there were actual prostitution with women selling their bodies. I believe that Henry also proved that. So for me, I'm definitely going to have to judge this as a draw. As a draw. So that's my vote. Now I was going to give it to Henry based off of what he showed from the times of Israel. That right there would have just it would have killed the argument. It would have killed that. But when I went and I actually researched what this brother, what the brother Henry brought out, because I've never seen that, never read that. So that was very interesting. And but when I seen it, it said 8,000 years ago. So to me, I would have to, my vote would be a draw between um, Yashar and the brother Henry. So me, Henry, first round, Yashar, second round. And as far as the question and answer, it was definitely a draw on that. So my final vote is a draw. That's my vote.
Alrighty. And due to the fact that the last judge, pretty much, I don't know, he was on earlier, he dropped off and hasn't came back. So in my opinion, it was a very, very good debate. The title of the debate is, did the people of Israel have prostitution? Without a doubt, I am convinced that the people of Israel did have prostitution. All right, here we prove that. Yashar, you backed him up. You said that it was prostitution in Israel, and you also said it was spiritual prostitution. So it was a good debate. I learned a lot today. So unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry. Y'all blame me, blame Ivory Skills. This is my platform. And the judge didn't, the last judge isn't here. So it's just up in the air. And let me say this, Yashar, you brought out some great points about, going into the definitions and different things like that. There was some great points. When you said he got his goods back, I was like, oh, that was good. But then when he shot it down with, she was at the point of death when she returned it, but she got her goods back plus more. I don't know. It was good, y'all. So I'm not a judge. I'm not gonna sit here and talk the whole time. Thank everybody for tuning in.